Let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever bought something online and after you checked out, you asked, wait, how on earth did they get me to buy that? Yeah, that wasn't an accident. Today, I'm breaking down the 7 psychological principles you can use in your ecom emails to get people to buy ethically, predictably, and without sounding too salesy. If you're running an ecom brand and your emails are not converting, this is probably why. So let's get straight into it. Let's talk about why people buy. People always buy with emotion and then they justify it with logic post-purchase. So studies in neuroscience and behavioral economics show that decisions are actually made in the emotional centers of the brain, in the limbic system, and then logic is applied post-purchase to justify that decision. One famous neuroscience study actually showed that when the emotional part of the brain is damaged, people can't actually make any decisions, even simple ones. So let's talk about psychological trigger number 1, which is loss aversion. People hate losing twice more than they enjoy winning. And this was confirmed by a study by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in 1979. It's called Prospect Theory and Analysis of Decision Under Risk. And actually, Kahneman was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2002. So they found that losses are weighted significantly more heavily than equivalent gains. In other words, losing $100 feels about as bad as winning $200 feels good. The way you can use this for your ecom emails is to use expiring discounts in terms of urgency, to use limited inventory in terms of scarcity. So urgency is always a function or a unit of time, and scarcity is always a function of quantity or units. Or you can use this as last chance reminders. For example, last chance to enter the giveaway, last chance for this sale, last chance for this product launch, etc. And the reframe is to highlight what people are going to lose out on if they don't act. And this is an email from Magic Spoon. They basically have this product, salted caramel, and then they say we're almost sold out. And people really hate missing out on something they like. So psychological trigger number 2 is social proof, and we use some form of social proof in about, I would say, 60 to 70% of the emails that we send for our clients. It's incredibly effective. And this was confirmed by Solomon Asch in 1951 in a study called Effects of Group Pressure upon the Modification and Distortion of Judgment. So here's what he tested. Participants were asked to perform a very simple visual task, which is basically matching line lengths. So he gave them these lines and asked them to match the ones that have the same length. The correct answer was very, very obvious. For example, he gave them lines that are 10 inches, 15 inches, 20 inches, or something like that. So he didn't choose lines that are very close in length to make it simpler to people. So the interesting twist here is that he had other people in the room, these are actors, that intentionally gave the wrong answers. The key findings were approximately 75 of participants conformed to the group at least once. So 75% of the people who are not actors conformed with the wrong answers that these actors gave, even though they know it was incorrect, and even though there was no reward or punishment for this task. So in short, people will doubt their own judgment and follow others when they are uncertain. And uncertainty rises especially pre-purchase or post-purchase as well. So pre-purchase, for example, people saying, is this brand legit? Is this worth the price? Will this work for me? And social proof is one of the best ways to resolve that uncertainty by outsourcing decisions to others through customer reviews, through purchase counts, for example, saying 500,000 customers bought this, through best seller signals. If a lot of people are buying this product, that it means that it's a good product. And then people like you bought this, or people who bought this particular product that you just bought also bought another one. And Amazon does this very, very well. So as an example, if you have a popular product, you can say something like 18,000 customers bought this in the last 90 days. And it works incredibly well because it answers the buyer's real question, which is, am I safe choosing this? And if 18,000 people have already bought this, it means that they vouched for it with their money and it's likely to be a good product. And here's an example from Board Cow. They basically have this social proof email where they highlight multiple reviews here. And the way we like to do it for our clients, sometimes once a month, we send an email with our best reviews from the last 30 days. Another way we like to do it that's been working incredibly well for our clients as well is to choose one very long review, especially one that highlights the before and after. So for example, before using your particular product, if your product solves a pain point or helps people achieve a desired outcome, and then after they used your product. So we like to highlight these as stories and start with the before and then talk about the after and then bridge with a product CTA. So psychological trigger number 3 is called cognitive ease. A confused brain equals no sale. The brain prefers options that are easy to process, and this is supported by research on processing fluency. A well-known study by Reber, Schwartz, and Winkelmann in 2004 showed that information that is easier to read, understand, or process is perceived as more trustworthy, more credible, and also more likable. That's why you always hear those marketers saying write in 5th grade level. So in practice, this means short paragraphs, simple, familiar words, don't use jargon or complex words, visual cues instead of long text, because visuals evolved way before speech, and then have one unclear CTA. I sometimes see these brands that have multiple CTAs per email, and then they just divide the customer's attention, and a confused customer equals no sale for your brand. So when something feels mentally effortful, people hesitate. And this is a great example from one of my absolute favorite brands called Graza. They have this email about the only sale they run during the year. It's called the Friendsgiving sale. I believe they run it before Black Friday, around October, something like that. And then they have our biggest sale of the year, some visual cues here, 20.76%, which is part of their personality, part of their tone of voice. It's very quirky. And then they have the CTA above the fold. This will increase the CTR. And then you will notice that they say no code needed, making it even simpler for people to take action. And then they have another visual cue here, and kinda our only sale. So this is more like an urgency / scarcity kind of play. So psychological trigger number 4 is called authority bias. People are more likely to follow guidance from a perceived authority. This effect was demonstrated in a classic psychology research by Stanley Milgram in 1963, which showed that people will comply with instructions from an authority figure even when they feel uncertain or uncomfortable doing so. So there are a few ways we use this for our clients. The first one is going to be borrowed authority. For example, saying something Oprah's favorite gadget or Joe Rogan's daily foundation, like AG1 says, for example, 9 out of 10 doctors use this, men's health product of the year, ISO certified, FDA approved, etc. So you're trying to borrow authority from other people or institutions that vouched for you. The second one is going to be acquired authority. For example, saying winner of this year's award sold $100 million worth of books in 72 hours. This is Alex Hormozi's launch. And the third one is going to be shown authority. So if you are just starting and you don't have the social proof or the authority in the market, for example, you haven't sold $100 million worth of products and you haven't been endorsed by any authoritative figure, then you can start demonstrating your authority by showing that you really understand the market and your customer profile. When people feel that you know what you're talking about, then they are more likely to comply and buy from you. So I did a breakdown recently comparing AG1 to IM8. IM8 is one of the fastest scaling brands in the supplement space. They managed to grow from 0 all the way to $100 million run rate in less than 11 months. And I broke down the differences between the two. So if you're interested in watching that, click on the link in the description to watch it after this video. But I wanted to highlight how they use authority to their advantage here to get people to place an order. So you can see when you sign up for their welcome flow, literally the first email, they immediately start with showing David Beckham's picture here. So they are trying to borrow authority from him because he's a famous athlete. And you will notice that they highlight authority in a lot of other emails as well. So you can see in the third email here, they have more authority, what our IM8 ambassadors are saying. So a lot of people who are vouching for them that are doctors or maybe coaches or something like that. In the fourth email, they again highlight more authority by showing their scientific and medical advisory board. And they do a lot of name dropping as well, trying again to borrow authority from institutions like the Yale Griffin Prevention Research Center. This one is from Sinai Microbiome Research Institute. This guy from NASA. This lady is from the Mayo Clinic. And again, they use even more authority in email number 6 here, what our community is saying. Again, this is a doctor. This is Dustin Poirier from the UFC. So they use a lot of authority to try to get people through that purchase hurdle. So psychological trigger number 5 is called contrast or anchoring. And this was confirmed again by Tversky and Kahneman in 1974 in a study that's called Judgment Under Uncertainty, Heuristics, and Biases. So this one is a very, very interesting study. So step number 1, they gave people a random starting point. So participants were asked questions like, is the percentage of African countries in the UN higher or lower than X? And X was actually generated randomly by a spinning wheel. So for example, they had a spinning wheel. Let's say it landed on 10. And then they asked people, is the percentage of African countries in the UN higher or lower than 10? And people were split into different groups. So each of them got a different number from that spinning wheel. So for example, some people saw a low number, let's say 10, and other people saw a high number, let's say 65. So everyone knew the numbers were random because they were literally spun in a wheel and they had no informational value before this. So step number 2, they asked them for an estimate. So after people answered higher or lower than the number they saw in the spinning wheel, they asked them, what do you think is the percentage of the African countries in the UN? The crazy thing that they found is that despite people knowing the anchor was random, which was basically generated by a spinning wheel, people exposed to lower anchors gave much lower estimates, and people exposed to higher anchors gave much higher estimates. So for people who got, for example, a 10 on that spinning wheel, they were more likely to give an answer that is closer to 10. So for example, they said 8 or 13, and people who are exposed to higher anchors, let's say, for example, 30 or 40, they were more likely to give numbers that are closer to those random numbers. This is absolutely mind-blowing, and even experts were actually affected by this. So the anchor didn't determine the answer, but it pulled judgment towards it. So this is what's called insufficient judgment, and you see it a lot in packaging when you're about about to buy a service or an app, they always have one option. They say most popular or best or something like that, and they try to anchor the other packages based on that number. And a lot of marketers do this as well. So for example, if you checked one of Alex Hormozzi's launches, he always at the end, he highlights a lot of value. He says, hey, you're going to get this, which is a $2,000 value. You're going to get that, which is a $1,000 value. You're going to get that, which is a $4,000 value, etc. And then he gives you the total. So what I'm about to offer is $20,000 worth of value. So he tries to anchor you to that point. So later when he says that the price is actually $500 or something like that, you'll think it's incredibly cheap compared to the value he's provided. So the first number or comparison people see becomes a reference point, and everything after is judgment relative to that number. So even when the anchor is arbitrary and they know it, even when people are warned about it, and even when people believe they are being rational. Again, people always make decisions with emotion and then justify it with logic later. So AG1 does this very, very well. So they have this email where they say, put your money where your health is. And then they try to compare 1 month subscription to other equivalent things. So 1 month subscription is 15 coffees on the go. It's 4 drop-in workout sessions, and it's 2.5 meals dine-in out. So they try to anchor or link their product subscription to things people do on a daily basis to make it a no-brainer for them to order this product. So psychological trigger number 6 is called commitment and consistency. And this is one of my absolute favorites. So people want to act in ways that are consistent with their previous actions. So you will find this principle detailed in Robert Cialdini's book, Influence. I highly recommend that book. And it's based on decades of social psychology research. One of the most cited demonstrations for this is a study by Friedman and Fraser in 1966, where people who agreed to a small initial request were far more likely to agree to a much larger request later. Small commitments change self-perception, and you will see this in full effect from those people who always come to you on the street, and you will notice that they always ask you a question that they are 99% sure you're going to say yes to. For example, they say, hey, do you care about animals? Do you care about dogs? Do you care about the environment or something like that? And what they are trying to do is they are trying to get a micro commitment or a micro yes, because the more of those you give upfront, the more you're going to comply at the end when they ask you for a donation. People really hate cognitive dissonance, because if you said initially that you cared about dogs and then you refused to donate to their dog shelter, then you will feel very, very icky about it. And we use this a lot in our pop-ups. So instead of asking for the email directly when people see the pop-up, we ask for their permission first. We ask for a micro investment or commitment first. So we say, would you like a mystery discount or a mystery coupon or a mystery offer or something like that? Then once they click yes, they go to the second screen. Then we ask them for the email. And just by doing this, we significantly increase our client's opt-in rate. It takes literally 10 minutes to implement. So the last psychological trigger is called identity signaling. So people don't just buy products, they buy signals about who they are or who they want to be. A study by Berger and Heath in 2007 showed that consumers use products to signal identity, especially when identity is relevant or visible to others. So people don't just make choices in a vacuum. They always make choices that either reinforce their existing self-image or an image that they strive towards. So instead of selling features, always sell benefits or outcomes and signal identity as well. So as an example, this product has great features. Basically, a very small percentage of your audience are going to care about your features. The vast majority are going to care how your product is going to make them feel and how it's going to change their life if it solves a particular pain point or helps them achieve a desired outcome. So an alternative for that could be for people who take their health seriously. So we're trying to call out that identity. We say designed for founders who care about longevity, or for people who don't outsource their health. So this is a health-focused product. Instead of saying save more money, we can say built for people who don't cut corners. Instead of saying affordable everyday basics, we say made for people who prefer fewer, better things. So we always try to call out that identity, whether it's existing or desired identity. So in terms of high converting application, always position products around values and not specs or features. Use language that implies the buyer's type. For example, if you're the kind of person who cares about their health, cares about not cutting corners, cares about their family, or cares about their dog, people always buy with what feels consistent with who they believe they are. So there is a great example here from Tiffany & Co. and they have this image at the top, and at the bottom they say for the one with timeless style. So they are trying to call out that identity. So to sum it up, high converting emails don't try to persuade harder, they remove resistance. They always work with how people already think, decide, and act. So when you apply these triggers, decisions feel easier, risk feels lower, and buying feels natural and not forced. This is the core of of what makes ecom emails convert, not fancy design and not some smart sounding copy. If you'd like to generate more revenue and profit for your ecom brand from email SMS, then we're happy to help. I've been in business for 16 years and in ecom specifically for over 12. And just in the past few years, we helped over 40 brands double, triple, and in some instances, 12x their email revenue in as little as 30 days. At Power My Marketing, which is our email and SMS retention agency, we help our clients increase their ads ROAS, their website's conversion rate, their average order value, their customer lifetime value, and most importantly, their profitability, so they are able to spend even more at the top of the funnel to continue scaling faster. So you will see here that we helped Grant from Goodwood Audio 13x his email revenue in just 30 days. We helped Toastery go from 12% of attributed email revenue to 40%. We've been working with Ari from Ono for a year and a half, and we took him from 20 to 35%. We helped Dana from Kingsman Premium consistently stay above 40% of attributed email and SMS revenue, and we peaked at 53% during busy periods. So if you'd like results like these, click on the link in the description to schedule a quick call with me. And if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. See you in the next one.